Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive EV live on YouTube on this very special Thanksgiving Eve episode. I'm excited to know that there's some more development going on with the Tesla Semi. Pepsi has already talked about how they're expecting to get a few of their first deliveries later this year, despite Tesla saying that the entire program has been postponed until next year. That's probably what I'm going to default to. It's hard to not get excited about that, but I'm still going to say let's not expect official Tesla Semi deliveries this year. But now that they have gotten official permission from the city to begin construction on their first Megachargers, and we saw how quickly the first Megachargers at Giga Nevada went up, it abides credit to a lot of the rumors that they were starting this pilot line build up at Giga Nevada that was not going to be producing semis at high volume, but it was just going to, kind of start things out and start testing them for Tesla's internal use. And then they'd go from there. And maybe Pepsi is helping out with the development process because when the Pepsi CEO said they were expecting some of the first Tesla semis this year, Elon didn't really say that's not true. He just said don't look too much into it. So, of course, that's what we all do is look into it. But Doug Grinberg's brought up an excellent point that I haven't been following to answer your question, but he said, who's following the progress of chart-in megawatt charging system standards committee? I don't know how to keep up to date with those. Let me know if there's a Twitter account or something that keeps us posted with megawatt charging systems. But I believe if they have received permits now to begin construction on a megacharger, and they've already technically got a megacharger built and seemingly operational at Giga Nevada, that they must have a connector or a standard at least somewhat close. I know they've been talking about this for years now. Sounds like it could be pre-beta test vehicles. I think that's what's most likely. It's just weird if your customers are trying out your pre-beta test vehicles. It's like, so if the deliveries have kind of started in a way, but not in the way you'd think. Oh wow, we have people watching from Manila, Philippines. I've been there. We've got some family in the Philippines, so that's cool to know. Genvier says it would be cool if the Semi and the Cybertruck shared battery things. Cathode wise, they should. Unless plans have changed, which is very possible. But at Battery Day, when they unveiled their diversified cathode approach, they showcased that the Cybertruck and Semi would be getting a high nickel-based cell because it's the high nickel-based batteries that are more mass-sensitive. So the Cybertruck is mass-sensitive, as is the Tesla Semi, because getting your weight down on those vehicles and still having an insane amount of energy is very, very important because you're going to be towing a lot with a Semi. But before I forget, before we get too deep into the weeds, I need to give another special thank you. Shout out to our executive and enhanced patrons here. Joshua Vinnick, Martin Turnert, Wojciech Kaminsky, Planet Tex, Dr. Mark Choi, who is a dentist in the Woodland area. Sorry, I'm covering this up. And then Bennett Williams, Dylan Zimmer, Jacob Hallbach, and Joshua Levitsky. So 2 Joshuas on the list. Starting and ending with Joshua. But thank you guys for, seriously, all of your tremendous support. We're slow and steady saving up for the Model Y. Not the R1T, despite what many comments were saying. Don't worry, I'm not budging. The R1T is a really, really cool truck, but no, it's not going to fit our use case better than the Model Y can. And I'm especially having a hard time not getting excited for the 4680 Model Ys coming out next year. I'm not 100% certain that's what we're going to get is a 4680 Model Y because there's still a lot we don't know about it. We don't know the timelines, we don't know the range numbers, we don't know the price. All of these things could impact our decision. Part of me is like, let's just get the cheapest Tesla possible because every time I watch these FSD beta videos, I'm just like, that's so cool. Let's just try it right now. But the other part of me is like, well, Drew, you're gonna this Tesla we buy is going to be in our household for a long, long time. I'm not a car collector type guy. I don't want to buy a vehicle and then trade it in for another one and then sell it for another thing. Like, I want to buy it and hold on to it for a long time. So it's best not to rush into these things and to be really, really thoughtful about it going in. And if they end up coming out with a 4680 Model Y and it's like, $80,000, I'll be like, okay, maybe that's not the way to go. But if they come out with a lithium iron phosphate, rear-wheel drive Model Y that would be far more tempting, especially if the price was lower. But on the subject of Cybertruck and Semi, I've suggested this so many times in podcasts and in videos before, to the point that I want to start like rapid tweeting Elon about it, because it does, in my opinion, make a ton of sense. I feel like whatever the charging standard is that Charin is working on, the megawatt charging system, they should at least include that on the highest range option Cybertruck. Because the most amount of people I know that are opting for the 500-mile range option are doing it because they know that when they tow something with the Cybertruck, the range is going to be cut in half. So that's that's not great. And 500 sounds really good until you drop it to 250 with a trailer and think about all the trailer disconnections you have to make at every supercharger. That's going to be quite a headache. But if all these megachargers that are going to start going up, Pepsi looks like they're going to have the first like customer megacharger, whereas the megacharger at Giga Nevada is mostly for, it'll probably be used for Tesla's own trucking equipment between Giga Nevada and Fremont, but it's kind of in-house, so I don't really count that. It's kind of prototype stuff, but Pepsi is not Tesla, you know, so that's a partnership. That's a company putting those stalls in. But as Tesla starts installing more and more megachargers, especially if they're pull-through, like the ones at Giga Nevada and probably Pepsi, because that's what makes most sense for a Tesla Semi. You drive through, you plug in, you charge, and then you go all the way out. You don't have to back out and that kind of thing. Like, it's really interesting to imagine if the Cybertruck, which is likely going to have very, very large batteries in it, especially because of its weight, its size, how many motors it's going to have, the exoskeleton. Some people are convinced that the exoskeleton design and the structural battery pack and all that is going to somehow make the 500-mile range Cybertruck under 5,000 pounds. I don't think that's going to happen personally. I think maybe best case scenario it's under 6,000. But the steel is heavy. The armored glass is heavy. Bigger vehicles weigh more. I know how crazy that sounds, but the Cybertruck has bigger tires. It's going to have more motors than the Model S and X, which are already over 5,000 pounds. At least the X is. I'm not sure about the S, but just with the rear wheel steering mechanism, that's not going to be free weight. You know, that's going to take up some more space on the inside. And to go that far, you know, the Model X is over 5,000 pounds and it has a 100 kilowatt hour pack, and that doesn't break the 400-mile range mark. So if you're trying to get a larger vehicle with the vault, with the adaptive air suspension system, exoskeleton, and all that armored glass put together, these bigger tires, rear wheel steering, all of the fancy things the Cybertruck has going for it, and you wanted to get it 500 miles of EPA estimated range, that's going to need a big old battery pack. I'm sorry. It's just going to be heavy. It's going to be big. It's not going to be the most efficient Tesla. If anything, the Cybertruck will likely be the least efficient Tesla, short of the Semi. That doesn't really count. That's in its own class of its own. But it's funny to me that people were kind of harping on Rivian or docking Rivian for making the least efficient electric vehicle, but I was like, well, it's also the first truck. All of these electric trucks are not going to be very efficient because all the other EVs are like sedans or in crossovers, which are inherently more efficient and more aerodynamic in general. But if you could take these Cybertrucks that the high range ones are more likely to be used for towing, instead of trying to disconnect the trailer and back into a supercharger, charge up, and then reattach to the trailer and keep going, have the regular Tesla connector on one side and then perhaps the Megacharger on the other, or at least right next to it. I don't really care where the placement is, whatever makes sense for how the Megachargers are built. But letting the high-range Cybertruck that's going to have a very massive battery, probably 200 kilowatt hours, maybe more, and let the Megacharger top that off so that when people are towing, they can charge up and not have to disconnect the trailer and then keep going. You know, like that 500-mile range Cybertruck is going to need some special privileges, in my opinion. They probably won't do it, but I still think it'd be a great idea. Let's see. Javon says, I live in the UK, so Giga Berlin being active is a huge relief for getting prices lower across the Tesla models, so well done, Tesla, for getting that up and running. Yeah, I don't think it's going to get much cheaper right away. That's something I want to remind people. Like, it takes time for factories to ramp up, and I'm excited for Giga Berlin. I'm glad that it's operational, at least in its beta period. It seems to be producing a few Model Ys already, and they're seemingly looking for final approval, and hopefully starts official production in December. But even if it starts tomorrow, it's probably still going to take around a year before we start experiencing some of the benefits of having more localized production. It won't get cheaper right away. Um, let's see. If you were to get a Model Y, what model and specs would you go for? It's hard to know. I'm not terribly interested in the current options. Like, I definitely don't care about performance or acceleration. That's just not my thing. I've been in single motor Teslas that, in my opinion, were incredibly fast vehicles. I've driven rear wheel drive Model 3 fairly extensively. We rented it for a weekend, and I floored that thing, and I thought it was crazy fast. And I've of course also been in the dual motor Model 3 and experience that acceleration. So yes, I'm well aware they go much faster than 0 to 60 in 5 seconds or whatever I experience, but it's not something I care about that much. All Teslas are fast for me, and the only other option is the dual motor all wheel drive, which is still using the 2170 cells, which, okay, they work, they're fine. I'm not saying I'll never buy a car with those cells, but it's $59,000 right now for the cheapest option, and it may get worse. Yeah, like Fodfly saying, if it keeps up, you can buy it, keep it a year, and sell it for more than you paid for it a year later. Yeah, but then I won't have a car, and I'll have to pay more for the car. Maybe there's a cheaper one that's better or something by then. But yeah, I'm not really interested in that game of like buy one now, hold on to it for a while, and then sell it for a new one. And that's not the approach I want to take with vehicles. Um, but I'm interested to see how the lineup changes next year. To answer your question, Javon, basically, like, I'm very interested and very excited to see how the 4680 changes the Model Y lineup. Like, I've always been interested and fascinated by Tesla's approach ever since, well, pre-battery day as well. But after battery day, I was like, okay, this is really cool. They're like ramping this new cell form factor. They're using the cells for their structural integrity. They're using single piece castings. And now when we all watched all these factory tours at Giga Berlin where they're like bolting the seats of the car directly to the battery pack and they show how many steps they can save, I'm like, this is going to be a much lighter weight Model Y, which improves on efficiency. We don't know exactly how Tesla is going to implement it, because on one hand you could say, go back and watch battery day and look at how during each stage of the process they say this allows for a 10% range increase, or this allows for a 14% range increase, or a weight reduction, and that kind of thing. And if you add up all of those percentages together and apply it to what they were using as an example at battery day, which was the Model Y, you would basically get a way over 400-mile range. If you apply all of those percentages, there's no guarantee that they will. It's very possible, and in fact, some people would say it's straight up likely that Tesla will not put as big a battery in the Model Y as they can, because the demand for the Model Y is already off the charts. So many people are ordering it, and that's why the price keeps going up. And it's using fairly dated technology. The range is 330 miles, which is not bad by any means. It's not bad, but at well over $50,000 and 330 miles of range, lots of people love it, and lots of people keep buying it. Sorry for the lag. I'm on Starlink, which is supposed to be out of beta, but it still gets all spotty like this sometimes. So if it gets a little laggy, it'll smoothen itself out in a second. But if they start introducing even higher range options for the Model Y, demand is going to be even more insane. So they could very well just keep the range around the same and just use the new battery technology to save on cost, because it's supposed to save a lot of steps and it's meant to be a more streamlined manufacturing experience to use a structural pack and to bolt the seats right to the battery and to skip all of these steps that they don't have to worry about now at Giga Texas, but Fremont still does have to worry about it. So I'm not entirely sold that we're definitely going to get a 4680 Model Y, but it's certainly on my list of like, I need to know more, because if they do come out with a 400 range option, that's going to be really tempting. But they're probably going to price it accordingly, because they're going to know demand for that one is going to be insane. So they might have to up the price a lot, which might price it out of my budget or price it out of what we're willing to pay, essentially. This is still a lot of money for a car, regardless of what Tesla we get. Um, I've never spent more than $4,000 on a car before, so this is still a lot. But if they do come out with the 4680 Model Y and the price is high or something like that, I'm also going to be really interested in what happens to all the other Model Ys. Like, are they just going to keep selling a 2170 cell version that's dual motor for the exact same price as it is now, and it just has lower range? Or are they going to replace that with a long range rear wheel drive option that gets 350 miles per charge and it's slower, but the 4680 option goes over 400, so people aren't as inclined to buy that one? Or are they going to repackage the lithium iron phosphate batteries from, they already have a standard range Model Y in China that uses LFP. They could reintroduce a cheaper option for the rear wheel drive Model Y in the US. That could be really tempting. If the range is 260, 270, that's good enough for me. I could live with that if it means I save a ton of money. But yeah, there's just a bunch we don't know, basically. I'm saving for a car that doesn't exist yet, essentially. The trim, at least, I want doesn't exist yet. But I know that with Giga Texas coming online, there's got to be some changes in store with the Model Y lineup. I'd be very surprised if just everything stayed exactly the same. Prices should change, range numbers should change, weight should change, because they're using a lot of different approaches with this new factory. So it's tough. It's kind of hard to know exactly what we're going to do. And it's a little stressful sometimes when you see the prices changing and we don't know what's going to happen. But we've got time, basically. There's not a huge rush. Let's see. Live in the UK. Looking forward to first deliveries from Giga Berlin. Awesome. Dalmer Electric Island is the first vehicle charging site designed with heavy-duty trucks in mind. Well, that's good. Cybertruck looks like it has enough internal volume to support 2 chargers of different capacities. I would hope so. I don't know what the wiring infrastructure requires to support a Megacharger, but if it's at all possible to fit the pull-through Megacharging station tech into the Cybertruck, I think it would be worth it. The thing that I'm most surprised by is Tesla has been so public about their advancements and no one is copying. So many new cars in 2021 that is worse than the Roadster from 2008. I hear that a lot. I don't exactly know what people mean. I mean, the Roadster, the people that have them now, like, can't let them die. If they get to 0%, they, like, don't turn back on. But I do think that, yeah, there's a lot of tech that Tesla has that no one's come close to, but there's still good options out there. I know a lot of people that have gotten the ID4 and like it, and I see a lot of Mach-E's where I am. I'm not saying they're better overall. I'm just saying they're good enough for people that didn't want a Tesla for whatever reason, which is fine. Let's see. Which do you prefer for most high schoolers, trade school or college? Oh man, there's so much variety with high schoolers. You can't like pick one size and say which is better. It depends on the person. If they want to become a doctor, obviously they should go to college in med school. If they want to become a welder, then they should probably go to trade school. Like it depends too much. You can't just pick one. I always use this example. I don't know why, but to me, it's essentially saying, what is the better tool, hammer or saw? Which is better? It's like, well, what am I doing? If I got to hammer a bunch of nails into a wall, no, the saw's not better. But if I got to, cut a bunch of wood, then no, the hammer's not. It's like they're both good at different things. College and trade schools have, good uses for different things. That doesn't mean everybody should go to college or everybody should go to trade school. It just depends what you're doing. Let's see. What's your budget for it? It's tough because what's difficult about doing YouTube full time is that your income is not guaranteed. You could be perpetually away from your best paycheck ever or your worst paycheck ever at any time. So we've literally had fluctuations in my annual income of like probably, I'm trying to think, probably like $40,000 or $50,000. Like one year you do a lot better, one year you do a lot worse. So when you're making these big purchase decisions in the future and you're saving up for a big car like this, big as an expensive car like this, it's near impossible to know how much you're going to have a year from now or 10 months from now or even 6 months from now. You're like, well, if I make around this much, we could afford this. If I make around this much, we can afford this. So I don't know exactly what the budget is. I mean, ideally, the lower the better. Obviously, we're not hoping to spend a crap ton of money, but um, I guess rough estimate, if the Model Y starts costing more than $70,000, that's what would probably make me less inclined to get one, and probably just settle with a Model 3, um, or something like that. I'm not against buying used. The only problem is all the used Model Ys cost more than the new Model Y, so that doesn't help. Um, but yeah, if the prices get really, really bad, and they've already gotten fairly bad, to be fair, but if they start getting over a certain price, which I think our limit would be around 70K, but that's I don't feel very confident about that. It could be 65, and I'd be like, ugh. But I don't know how much money I'm gonna have by the time we're ready to, not ready, but by the summer of next year, I don't know. Like I can make estimates and I can do predictions. Obviously, I hope YouTube and everything goes really, really well, and then we can buy exactly what we want. But it could go really poorly. It's just hard to know. Um, that should be able to go to zero. It should, but Tesla sell the new Roadster battery pack at some point. Yeah, but if you're using the Roadster as an example, is no one can beat that. Well, they're not selling EVs and then saying, okay, don't let them die at 0%. Otherwise, you'll have to buy a $5,000 battery upgrade. There's the Roadster had its fair share of issues. For the record, I would rather have a ID4 than a Tesla Roadster original, because the original Roadster can't supercharge. You can only charge it at home. So I don't completely abide by the no one can beat the first Tesla. It's like, there's a lot of people buying them, though. They're sold on them, whether or not you think the tech is more dated or whatnot. Zachary says, similar with a lot of business-based income, it's stressful sometimes. I'm trying to figure out what my own budget is. Either I was looking at a $40,000 used Model S myself. Yeah, I've looked at those too. Model Y certainly fits our use case the best, and I also just think there's the most amount of change coming up with the Model Y, so that's why I'm inclined to wait. Um, I'm kind of in the boat right now where I'm like, let's see what happens. I want to see what unfolds when it comes to the 4680 options and what the Fremont factory is going to build once Giga Texas is online. Like, there's a lot we don't know that I think we will know within the next year, and that will make my decision much, much easier. Like, I don't know. The way I see it right now is, if I only save like $5,000 or $6,000 by going with standard range versus long range, I can make that much or save that much within a couple months. And we do plan on owning this car for a really, really long time. So I'll just spend the extra money if it's that close. But if I can save like $15,000 or $20,000 by going with oh, wow, thank you, Tyler. That was nice of you. Appreciate that. Supercharging the candle. That's awesome. That helps me afford this very expensive vehicle. But yeah, if I can save $15,000 or $20,000 by going with a lower range option, that's a different story. That's quite a bit. What would be your reaction of Rivian being purchased by Amazon and just being an Amazon van company? The more I think about it, the more I can see it. I'd be sad because I love the R1T and the R1S, and I don't want big tech to just take over all the EV startups. I want Rivian to be a success of its own, and I don't want just a delivery van company. I'm not against Amazon having electric delivery vans. I just think Rivian has the potential to be so much more than that, and they've truly got a mission and a vibe that they're going for with their vehicles, of this adventurous outdoor off-road type approach to electric vehicles, which I think is unique. And it may be niche. It might not be as mainstream as what Tesla is doing or what Ford is doing, but it's still one I really appreciate, and I'm glad it's there. Like, I'm proud they exist, and I want them to succeed. So it's basically, in my view, the worst case scenario for Rivian. I think if they go completely bankrupt and production hell becomes unsustainable and they can't ramp the R1T and they can't ramp the R1S, then they'll probably just fall back on Amazon. They'll be like, okay, we're running out of money, we're burning through cash, and we can't be profitable. Amazon will just be like, okay, you're ours. We'll buy out the rest of your company, and you can just keep working on our vans. and maybe on the side do some, R1T stuff. But I don't want that because, I think a company can stay true to their own vision a lot better and focus on customers a lot more if they're not bought out by a big tech company. In that If that happens, Amazon basically becomes the customer. That's the end result. So I would be sad, but I think that's kind of the worst case scenario. I don't really think there's a situation where Rivian goes bankrupt, loses so much money, and Amazon doesn't want anything to do with it. So Amazon just says, all right, I guess you're screwed. You better go out of business. Like, they have a factory, they have products, they have customers technically now. They have so many moving pieces that I don't see there being an outcome where they just die. Basically, someone will buy them out. If Amazon doesn't, someone will. Um, let's see. If you arrived late and you don't know what we're talking about, YouTube lets you scroll back to the beginning. You can play it back at a faster speed and catch up with the live broadcast. But we started with talking about Megachargers and how Pepsi's getting permits for their first Tesla semi Megachargers, which points to the idea that Pepsi is going to be testing these things out alongside Tesla, which is exciting because I do want more all electric Class 8 trucks. I don't know how to say your name, but Stofel says, have you looked at commercial electric trucks class 6 to 8 like ones from International or Freightliner? Thoughts on their market demand versus Tesla Semi? I think Tesla Semi is probably going for a different, more mainstream approach. Like, I don't know much about those, no, but from what I've seen of the few class 6 or 8 electric trucks, they all seem to be going for short range deliveries that are like between 100 and, under 100-mile ranges. So they're not a ton of trucks kind of designed from the ground up to be electric focused. Whereas what excites me about the Tesla Semi is Tesla saying that the goal with this truck is to have the exact same payload and mostly the same capability as diesel semi trucks, thanks to the 4680 battery and probably structural packs and giga casting technology. Tesla's going to apply their secret sauce that isn't so secret to the semi, and that will allow them to have well over 500 miles of range. Elon actually said it's closer to 600 now. And again, that's with a full payload. And build out all these megachargers so that the Tesla Semi isn't going for a niche like deliveries between, warehouses within a city. It's going for, long haul routes that are used for like most common semi trucks. So it's a first generation. It's not meant to replace every diesel semi truck. I know that there's a lot of semis that go thousands of miles on their routes, but this is the closest we have to like a full on semi replacement for all diesel versions. And I think that the demand is going to be very, very high for it once the finances of it start speaking for themselves. Once you start showcasing how much cheaper it is to operate an electric semi truck compared to how much money you have to spend on diesel and oil changes and brake pads and windshields. All of that you get to kind of bypass with the semi thanks to the regenerative braking, the armored glass, and no need for diesel. And you can charge it at the destinations you deliver products to. So there's a lot of benefits, I think, in cost savings, which excites me about the semi. And its aerodynamics, of course, help a lot with that. So basically the most efficient semi truck ever. I don't know much about the International or Freightliner ones, but I'm assuming they're more short range. Those Rivian puts doing super well right now. Yes, they are. Do you think when Giga Texas goes online and the 4680Y is released, we'll know, as in the configurator options, etc.? Tesla probably will want to announce that their brand new cell is on sale, right? I'm unsure about that one. Like, I would hope so. My hope is that Tesla does disclose, like, okay, the 4680s are being used now. They're in this Model Y. Here's how to get one. I was kind of frustrated with Tesla's approach to rolling out lithium iron phosphate. They kind of didn't want to say much. They just sort of updated the rear-wheel drive Model 3 and then said, oh, okay, the range is a little higher now. And then you find out in the earnings deck later that's like, oh, we switched to LFP globally, by the way. So it seems like on the website end of things, Tesla doesn't like going into the battery tech very much. They don't like saying this car uses 2170 cells and this car uses lithium iron phosphate prismatic cells. It's totally possible that Tesla may treat it differently because the 4680 is something like they pioneered, they designed, and they rolled out, versus LFP, which is more of like a CATL type thing. You don't want to say this Tesla has batteries from China because some people may not like that. I don't think they have any reason to not like it, but they didn't want to bring it up. For the consumer, Tesla doesn't want you thinking about what kind of chemistry it is. They just want you to see the range and the price and be like, is that good enough? Okay, buy it. So it's possible. I guess it's somewhat possible that they could roll out the 4680 Model Y and we just don't know it. And they choose to keep the range number almost identical to the 2170 option. If that happens, I'm going to be very confused and not really sure what to do. But yeah, like obviously, if there's only a $5,000 or $6,000 difference between the 2170 cells and the 4680 cells, I'll take the 4680s. But I also think the cycle life for them should be much higher, which makes me very interested. Like, yeah, like let people know that what they're buying, but at the same time, also people, if they know that the 4680s are out on one specific option, that option's going to sell at really, really high volume, and all the other options aren't going to be as tempting to people. So that's why, to me, what made the most amount of sense, I don't know if Tesla's going to do this, but what makes the most amount of sense to me is that Giga Texas will start with performance Model Ys, because those have bigger tires and the beefed up brake calibers, and those are going to benefit from the weight savings and the energy density increase. So if you switch the performance Model Y to 4680, you'll probably get much better range. You'll get better handling and that kind of thing. And on the website, they'll just keep dual motor long range with 2170 cells. That way it's like, okay, the expensive Model Y has the better batteries, but you have to buy it with these, less efficient rims, but those are compensated by the improved battery chemistry. So that's what I thought they were going to do. But Giga Texas has production capacity for much higher than just performance Model Y. So long term, that wouldn't really happen. I think short term it might work to just have one Model Y with 4680s, but long term I feel like they're going to produce far more Model Ys out of Texas than they are Fremont. So yeah, they have cell production there for the 4680 ready. So yeah, that's a good question. I hope we know though. That's my hope. But knowing how Tesla rolled out LFP, I wouldn't be shocked if they decided to kind of keep it quiet and you don't really know what you're buying. You can't really tell. What's the cheapest Tesla you can get? If you're counting used, I've seen some Model S's going for 40,000, but usually pretty old ones. Like it's usually the 2013 or 2014 Model S's that are selling for 40,000, which don't have FSD capability. Some of which I don't even think have autopilot. The really old ones don't even have autopilot. But yeah, like 40,000 is basically the lowest I've seen it capable of. Now the cheapest Model 3 is 45. Demand for that. Hold on. Starlink's wigging out. There we go. Okay, common misconception with Tesla unionizing is that they wouldn't get stock options. This is false. Tesla's workers would have more leverage collectively, bargaining for even more stock options. Okay. Cool. If they want to unionize, they can, but so far, people don't seem that interested in it. Let's see. Probably use Model S for just price, yeah. Streisand effect if they start telling everyone what cell is in what vehicle made where. Is there, I don't know how to pronounce that, but I'm guessing there's a certain effect for that. It sounds more like Osborne effect to me, except they're not really having much of an Osborne right now. It seems like even the dated technology is doing really, really well. Yeah, they have higher margin. That's true. Nick Stewart says, what do you think about Cybertruck production possibly starting with dual motor instead of tri-motor? It would be a less complex drivetrain, plus it would require less batteries per truck. Thoughts? It's not a horrible idea. It would require less batteries per truck, but the demand and the wait list for the dual motor is probably going to be a lot longer. because I'm predicting that the single motor will be scrapped entirely, and they're just not going to do it because they can say, "Yeah, not enough demand for it, and we were never going to hit that price point anyway." So, first of all, I don't think the dual motor Cybertruck will be $50,000. I think it'll be closer to $60,000, maybe more. Um, but I think my prediction is that Tesla is going to try to taper demand a lot once the Cybertruck is actually being produced, because they know the demand for it is going to be so insanely high. It already is crazy high. So they're going to kind of shave off as many orders as they can by only releasing fairly high price points. So to me, I'm pretty confident, like, no matter what Cybertruck they start with, they're gonna they're gonna sell. Like, it doesn't even really matter if it's $90,000 or $100,000. There's probably enough crazy pent up demand for the truck and so many people interested in it. I've seen the effect Cybertruck has on, clicks and the internet and how many people are interested in it. Like, even if they come out and say, all right, the first Cybertruck's going to be $90,000, they'll probably sell every one they make for at least a year or two. So I guess my prediction is that the margins on the higher priced option would be better than the lower priced option. I could be wrong there, but that's going to be a lot better than if it costs them $40,000 to build and they sell it for $60,000, that kind of thing. So, man, come on, Sterling, you got this. Once they can ramp up and then include long range. Yeah, but then my question is, if Giga Texas can ramp up and include the normal long range Model Y with 4680s, what is Fremont gonna do? My hope is that they would do rear wheel drive long range and standard range, like LFP for those who just want the cheapest Model Y possible, and then rear wheel drive long range with the 2170 cells, because you're going to have a lot of those batteries available and a lot of suppliers providing 2170 cells for the Model Y, that I don't think you need to divulge all of them to the Model 3, because only long range and performance Model 3 are using 2170s. Model 3 rear wheel drive is all to LFP now. So I don't know. Like, there should be a use for 2170 cells in the Model Y, even after the 4680s are ramped. So I'm not sure. Can you call Tesla to ask for a specific battery technology? I don't think so. I don't think that's how it works. And I wouldn't trust most of them. Like, I've gone on Tesla customer chat and asked them questions, and I've gotten different answers depending on the person they connected me with. So I wouldn't put much weight into what those people say online. Um, Tesla ranks second worst in Consumer Reports reliability survey. Any inside opinion? Well, I know that Tesla's had a lot of quality control problems. It's just, okay, follow that up with, is this an inherent company problem, or is this something that they can address and try to fix in the future? And in my opinion, it is, because we've seen fairly little quality control issues with Giga Shanghai. They've actually proven to have very, very reliable builds with great quality control. And what has Tesla been putting all of their money and investment and focus on for the past year or two? Building these next generation factories. So when asked about Fremont, or Model 3, and it's still using, all of these pieces, and it's not using the casting press and that kind of thing, Elon has said it's basically hard to change the wheels on a bus when it's going 80 miles an hour. So right now, Fremont is, constantly at full speed trying to build as many vehicles as possible. And that's what happens when we find out about quality control and unreliability of things going bad or needing to be replaced or worked on, is because Fremont's screaming so fast. Which I kind of understand, because, Tesla's mission statement is not, let's build the best cars in the world. Tesla's mission statement is, we need to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. So, right there in the mission statement is them openly saying our job is to accelerate. Our job is to speed things up. It's not so much about building the best quality control vehicles in the world. That's important, and I'm not saying they shouldn't prioritize that. I'm just saying it's lower on the list than make more EVs. And I do think that as we've seen with Giga Berlin and as Elon has talked about with Giga Texas, they have drastically different assembly approaches. And they're building these factories from the ground up. They're not trying to retrofit some old dated GM factory. If you've seen the layouts of how Fremont is laid out between all the different paint shops and general assembly and stamping, everything has to be rearranged and is probably assembled in a relatively sloppy way compared to how Giga Shanghai does it, which will be even better at Berlin and will be even better at Texas. This is how you fix that problem. The solution can't be, well, just shut down the assembly line and fix all of the layout problems with Fremont, because then you're not going to be making vehicles for probably months. Think of relatively how small the differences were between 2020 Model S and 2021 Model S. Like, okay, they update the fog lights a little bit, they update the interior, they tweak the displays, they give a yoke, and that type of tweaking took them several months of shutdown and retrofitting. So if you're talking, we need to drastically rearrange the entire layout of Fremont to result in better quality control and more reliable builds and that kind of thing, that's going to be shut down for probably a quarter, maybe longer. And you can't do that if that's your bread and butter. That factory's providing you with all of your income. So essentially, building better factories with better quality control in the future, these factories are going to fix those problems. Like, these are going to help with reliability. Second of all, Consumer Reports is objectively very, very biased against Tesla, and they've proven that time and time again. So I'm not shocked that Consumer Reports puts Tesla low on the list of anything, just because of probably how they phrase it. But I'm also not denying Tesla's had quality control issues, and I understand that they've been known for not being super reliable. But I think when you're a younger EV brand you're probably going to have some sloppy production in the middle of all that. And you're welcome to not buy into that. There's other EV brands that have a bigger emphasis on quality control and that kind of thing, but it typically ends up with a premium. You end up paying a bit more for it. That's your Porsches, that's your Lucids, that's your, other EV brands that aren't as known for that. But it's also common for Tesla to get brought up in the news a lot, because I've seen panel gap and reliability issues with all kinds of automakers, and Tesla gets a lot of clicks for bad press. It's just factual. Like, if you search Tesla and you see how many headlines include Tesla this got crashed, Tesla this problem, it's like a clickbait thing. It helps with news sites, so of course it helps to report on how bad Tesla is, but you don't see that kind of treatment with other brands. Let's see. Where's the next Gigafactory going to be in the U.S., your opinion? Probably not California. I don't think Elon likes California very much. And they've got the Fremont. I'm not entirely sure where. He just said, they're focused right now on their current factories, and now they've got Giga Texas, which is more centrally located. It's kind of equal distant from most of the United States. So they've got Texas, they've got Fremont, so it's just kind of an eventual natural occurrence that they would probably move towards somewhere on the East Coast where they can get a decent sized factory with decent tax breaks and that kind of thing. So I don't know exactly what state. I haven't researched that subject very much, but I think the U.S. has a lot more land out at Austin, so they can probably expand that factory even bigger than the current footprint that's already there. I think they're going to need a new facility of some kind. I don't know if it needs to be a whole separate Gigafactory or if they can just build another building next to Giga Texas somewhere. But I think that they're going to need another facility for whatever the 25K model or the Tesla Compact or that kind of thing. Total deliveries next year, 1.4 million. That's a decent guess. Yeah, if you were asking me, I probably would have predicted around 1.5 million. They've usually exceeded expectations when it comes to production capacity. And with the ramp of Texas and Berlin and Fremont and Fremont's had Model S and X basically shut down all of 2021. Giga Shanghai is ramping higher too. So I'd say 1.5 million is probably a decent bet. You think Tesla will ever come back to that 35K Model 3 after the pandemic? When do you think that would happen? I don't think it's all because of the pandemic. I think it's partly inflation and the dollar being worth less than what it was a year ago. If you adjust for inflation, the rear-wheel drive Model 3 is actually somewhat close to 35K when they unveiled it. But um, I don't think so. Like, I want it to come back, but the idea that a $45,000 car in 2021 will eventually become a $35,000 car, that's a big percentage you're hoping to shave off. So I would love it if it did. Don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't hold my breath. I don't think this is all just too much demand and part shortages that's resulting in the price going up. So sadly, no. It might go down a couple times in the future, but definitely not right now. Demand for it is way too high, and like Tesla talked about at their last earnings call, the demand for EVs has kind of taken them by surprise. There's been a lot of orders that they weren't expecting, a lot more orders than they were expecting. Um, the fact that Tesla survived is a miracle. The issues they have are minor. I agree. I think quality, if the biggest issue with your brand is quality control and panel gaps and that kind of thing, you're doing pretty good. The fact that they've remained profitable through the pandemic is a miracle in itself, and I think is underrated and underappreciated in how wisely they were able to navigate the chip shortage, and they still are navigating the chip shortage, and how intelligent they had to have allocated finances to actually turn profits during these really tough times where most automakers are shrinking market share and shrinking delivery numbers. And a lot of legacy automakers have just gotten so complacent because they're so big to the point that, like, oh yeah, I guess there's less chips, so we're going to build less cars. Meanwhile, there's less chips for Tesla too, and they're swapping out those chips with other chips and having to reprogram them, and they're increasing deliveries quarter after quarter. They're delivering more than they've ever delivered despite being in incredibly challenging supply chain scenarios. So that's amazing. Like, that's not appreciated, I think, by most people. They just think, oh yeah, okay, they build more, whatever. It should have been more though. um, do you think that Tesla will bring chip making in house? I think they could, but they probably won't. I think Elon was asked about that, and his response was essentially they see the chip shortage as a short term problem, and the only reason Tesla would start manufacturing their own chips in house is because they believe they can do it faster, cheaper, and better, and it would basically the investment it would require of them to build a factory and a fabrication plant and all that would pay off in the long run. And that's my theory, is that all of the investment required to start manufacturing your own chips would not equate to cheaper products or faster development. They think that pandemic has caused a short-term chip shortage, but in the long term, it'll all be ironed out um, within a year or so. I don't know exactly how long there's going to be a shortage because I'm not, in tune with every single chip that's needing to be ordered, but I'm going to guess no. Joey says, when is Tesla going to ship the Cybertruck? Do we have any info on that? Not any new info. Basically, I would say best case scenario, end of next year. Probably more reasonable scenario is Q1 or Q2 of 2023, unfortunately. Toyota did not get to where they are in 10 years, so people's expectations are too high for Tesla. Give them 50 years. Well, I can understand the rush. Tesla is not that new a company relative to Rivian or Lucid, but um, like there, a lot of people I think are eager for Tesla to catch up or accelerate development or quality control because their evaluation is so high. So that makes people go, hey, they should be better at this because they're $1 trillion company or what have you. But I think that Tesla's reliability and quality control issues are a Fremont problem. I don't think that's a Tesla problem. I don't think that there's some inherent flaw in the way that they've designed all their products that makes them unreliable. If anything, there's a lot less parts that can go wrong because there's no, transmission, there's no gearbox, there's no head gaskets, there's no oil changes and all that. You just have an electric motor, and all of your maintenance is like tires and windshield wiper fluid. So I would consider that fairly. I've seen other charts. I know Consumer Reports loves bringing up their low in reliability rating, but if you've seen other statistics done on customer satisfaction, Tesla leads pretty highly in that regard. So yes, there's reliability issues and there's quality control issues with a lot of Teslas, but from a lot of the studies I've seen, you get the most positive reactions from customers of Tesla compared to any other automaker. Out of all that you've driven, what's your favorite purely driving experience? Exclude features and design. They're all kind of similar to me. Um, I guess I like driving the Model Y, but the 3 was kind of lower to the ground. I guess I've just had the most driving experience with the Model 3, so I'm inclined to say that one. But I also had a lot of fun driving the ID4, particularly when I did a U-turn with it, and I turn. It has such a tight turning radius. I was just like, whoa, that was amazing. Um, Last September, a tech at a Tesla-owned body shop claimed they would start a wrapping service by the time the Cybertruck is released. Any legitimacy to this? A tech at a Tesla-owned body shop. I don't know, George, how to say if there's legitimacy to that. I don't know who it is, but um, I have to imagine wrapping the Cybertruck is probably like one of the easiest vehicles you could possibly wrap. uh, let's see. Maybe it's whenever they can get talent. There's a limited amount of talent. Well, I think most manufacturing companies are seeing a lack of labor. There's not enough people working. What about the Rivian? I haven't driven the Rivian, unfortunately. How are you? A little sick, little congested, runny nose. I have a little bit of a congestion, but I'm mostly fine. I don't think I'm sick. Tristan Hernandez says, any updates on test opening up the Supercharger network? I would consider buying a non-Tesla if I knew I wouldn't have to worry about too much range anxiety. Um, Pretty much they've just opened up a few stations in the Netherlands, but that's about it. There hasn't really been any development since then. If you're in the United States, I would not hold your breath. I don't think it's going to happen soon. My theory as to why Tesla is opening it up in the Netherlands first is because those superchargers are likely very low usage, and Tesla knows that if they open up superchargers to third parties in areas that have lines, people are going to get angry, and it's going to cause problems because most EVs don't have the charge port located where they do on Teslas, which means they're going to get stuck covering up two stalls. If you want to charge your e-tron or your Mach-E or something at a supercharger, you have to park to not the appropriate stall, but the one next to it. So now the person can't park next to you and charge, and that's going to cause a bunch of problems. In the US, also, they're going to have to send out a bunch of adapters or start retrofitting superchargers to support that. So that means we're probably years away from the supercharger network in the US actually opening up. So I would not buy a non-Tesla, like assuming that's all going to be fixed in a reasonable amount of time. It could take even longer. So don't hold your breath. Um, I think that's going to be a lot more problematic than people realize. It's not so much just like, flip a switch, now they support non-Teslas. It's like, now you got to sell adapters or extension cords or tell people how to charge at them. And also non-Teslas have to pay more for supercharging. I don't know if a lot of people caught that, but all of the non-Teslas that were supercharging have to pay a little bit more than Teslas do. So the price still goes up a bit. When do I think Robo taxis will go live, at least in some regions? I'm not convinced it will happen. I'm not the type of person that's like, it's a 100% for sure thing. It's just a matter of time. I just think the likelihood of it happening increases as Tesla develops FSD further and works on Dojo. Once they get that up and running, we don't know where the local maximums are. And I think that people didn't really pick up on that. Like at AI Day, they didn't really give forward a timeline, which I appreciate, and I think that's a good thing. But it was a very different approach from Autonomy Day, which is what everyone's mad and angry about all the time, because people say at Autonomy Day, they said there would be 1 million robotaxis by the end of 2020, and that this would be done, feature complete by the end of 2019, and it's clearly not done. See, Elon's a fraud, right? Like, to me, there needs to be a line between overly ambitious and fraudulent. Some people probably would fight on Elon about that all day, but I also think the same thing when companies are accused of being frauds when they just don't reach a delivery timeline or they don't reach a range number that they were hoping to reach. Like, there's a lot of people that are like, Aptera is a fraud because their vehicle can't go 1,000 miles per range. I'm like, well, it's aspirational, but if you're just going to call any product that hasn't been delivered yet a fraud, there's going to be like a million frauds in the world. So, like, I could easily make that same argument with Elon and just say, well, the Tesla Semi was supposed to come out in 2019 and now it's been delayed to 2022. Elon's a fraud, right? No, I don't think it's a fraud. They were just overly ambitious. They just thought they would hit a certain timeline and they didn't hit it. Waymo is already live in Arizona. That's a form of robotaxi. Well, his question specifically, I didn't read it exactly right. He says, when do you think Tesla robotaxis will go live? So that's a different thing. I do think they're a lot further away than most Tesla bulls believe. I tend to find myself more in the camp of we have a long way to go and this is just the start. Whereas a lot of Tesla bulls look at it more as, I still consider myself bullish, but a lot of people look at it as we're basically done and there's only a few edge cases we have to iron out and then we're already done. Yeah, Waymo is very expensive and not scalable, but I think it could easily be another 9 years before robotaxis from Tesla are working in certain jurisdictions. That's the thing, is it's not level 5 until it works in all jurisdictions. If it's restricted to a certain state, that's level 4. If there's any type of geofences, it's level 4. But the tech is pretty exciting. I do think Tesla's closer than anybody else. Waymo, in my view, is like a very, very expensive science experiment because you have to do all of this HD mapping and it doesn't work in the rain and you have people ready to take over at a moment's notice. Whereas what Tesla is trying to do is make a car capable of driving itself through a city or through a freeway that it's never seen before and could be dynamically changing every day. There could be a construction zone that comes in one day and changes all the lanes, repaints all the lines, and the Tesla needs to be able to go through that effectively and safely without ever having seen it before. Those are two very different approaches to autonomous driving. So it's kind of hard to say like one is ahead of the other. Other than I think Tesla's approach to self-driving has a lot larger reward than Waymo's approach, which is going to be incredibly slow and sluggish and expensive. And if Tesla achieves their goal, Waymo becomes pointless very quickly, whereas there's not really a scenario where Waymo achieves their goal and then Tesla's self-driving approach doesn't make sense because you can't buy a Waymo. Tesla is literally trying to solve robotic vision. That will be world-changing. I do believe it will be world-changing, but it's near impossible to try to put a timeline on that because, as we saw with Autonomy Day, they thought they had a roadmap to success that was fairly reasonably close. And they were like, this will probably be figured out by the end of next year. And we'll start, Elon, I think earlier in 2021 was saying at some AI conference that they're going to start having robotaxis by the end of this year. Obviously, that didn't happen. So Elon's an optimistic guy, so I understand why he's overly ambitious, because if you weren't overly optimistic, you probably wouldn't attempt to solve problems this hard. A natural, cynical, reasonable person would be like, putting people on Mars? No, that's like way too expensive, way too complicated. We can't do that. Or making all cars capable of driving themselves? That's way too complex. It's way too expensive and there's too many edge cases. No, I'm not going to even try that. So I'm saying it's not a bad thing that Elon is overly optimistic. Because I honestly think we need some people that see a roadmap to success and can see a path to make the impossible possible in order to achieve those things. But that doesn't mean we should believe all of their timelines. So that's what's funny is whenever I express my doubt on robotaxis, people are like, don't bet against Elon. I'm not betting against them. I'm a shareholder. I'm not shorting the stock or anything. I'm not betting that it won't be fixed. I'm just saying they have a consistent track record of not hitting their timelines, so I'm going to continue to doubt their timelines. And thankfully right now they've kind of walked back on giving timelines on robotaxi. At AI Day, they never once said this will be done by next year. this we'll have this finished by the end of next year. They didn't say anything like that. Um, so because they achieved a local maximum with their old uh, software labeling approach that they showcased at Autonomy Day, now they're trying a different approach with this neural net training and this different 4D vision approach of interpreting the car surroundings, and they're dropping radar now and all that. They believe this is the path to success, just like they believed it was before, but they could run into another local maximum and find out this is as good as it's going to get, and no amount of AI and neural net training will improve it. That could happen again. That's still a possibility, which is why I don't see level 5 robo taxis as a 100% guarantee. It's not if, but when. I still see it as an if. Um, but I also don't see it as impossible. If implies it is possible. It just depends on how good Dojo is and how much neural net training Tesla can actually handle between all these cars testing the self-driving software. So it's exciting and it's really, really ambitious, but yeah, end of the day, I'm pretty sure I say this in like every live stream, but end of the day, my goal with my own vehicle is not to turn it into a robotaxi. I don't need my car to drive itself. I don't need it to drive without me, basically. I want it to drive itself, but I'm okay if I have to be there, is what I'm saying. My dream from the beginning, the reason I was interested in Teslas in the first place was because I wanted to sit in a car and just not have to pay attention. Like I wanted to, just sit there and watch a movie or read a book or live stream or edit videos or go to sleep even. And if, okay, the regulators say someone needs to be in the driver's seat, I'll be in the driver's seat. But I'm not terribly interested in having my car drive strangers around town, like in making me money, but I have to clean up the car every day. Like I'm not interested in that so much. So I basically am trying to say it's okay if Tesla does not solve autonomous driving. I think if anyone does, Tesla will. They will be first. But even if Tesla can't do it, that's okay. They'll be fine. They can make enough money off of software revenue and self-driving features, and they'll be just fine selling vehicles to customers and making money that way. Hypervenom says, "Would you have bought a Cybertruck if it was already out?" Eh, I love the Cybertruck, and I love what it stands for, and I love their approach to it, but I'm not entirely convinced that it's a vehicle that makes sense for our lifestyle. I definitely don't love the size. I've been in trucks as big as the Cybertruck, and I don't like driving trucks that big. I don't like parking trucks that big. I'm not even sure if it would fit in our garage. So yeah, it's kind of hard to. I don't think so, even if it was out now. I would love to check one out, and I would love to test drive one and that kind of thing. But the size, and it's extremely functional and extremely practical, but I would not utilize it very much. I've tried many times to justify getting a truck because I don't know. It's kind of a weird cultural thing. Like where I live, especially, I live in a rural area, and there are a lot of pickup trucks everywhere, and the trucks have this emphasis on being more utility focused, and I like the way I look behind a truck. So it might be an ego thing that I've tried to convince myself several times of like, yeah, I want to drive a truck. I can get work done and throw stuff in the back. But then I look back at how I've driven and what we've used our car for over the past few years, and I'm like, how many times have I really needed a truck or a bed or that much space? I can count on one hand how many times I've needed a truck. It's not very often. So I would unfortunately be one of those guys that just kind of buys a truck to have one, just to be like, yeah, I'm a truck person. But they're inherently less efficient. They're less aerodynamic, and I don't think the Cybertruck will be an exception to that. Um, the Cybertruck will be far more efficient than any gas pickup truck, of course, that's for sure. But it will not be more efficient than a Model Y or a Model 3. It will not be as easy to park. I'm actually genuinely worried about the Cybertruck's supercharging situation. I've been to a lot of superchargers with my friends, and there's some pretty small parking spaces at those chargers. And the Cybertruck is not a small vehicle. And I'm trying to visualize how exactly it's going to fit into a lot of these stalls that I've seen. And it's not going to be pretty, in my view. They've already started building a couple superchargers with wider stalls to accommodate for the Cybertruck, but that's like that's probably like two or three stations that have been optimized for the Cybertruck. You're not going to go to those two or three stations. You're going to go. There's like thousands of them that you have to drive to. So no, it's really really cool, and I would love to make videos on it. And I would be super duper interested if they made a smaller one in the future, because that would probably solve a lot of my issues with it. But um, the other half of the equation is my wife is not a big fan of the Cybertruck. I like the way it looks, but she does not. And I'm not the only one that's going to drive this thing, so her opinion matters to me. She's working. We're both saving for it, so it's not just all on me. Her opinion matters. So I'm fascinated by it, and don't get me wrong, I'm always going to make a video about any tiny piece of Cybertruck news we get because it's a really, really cool vehicle. I honestly think it's like the coolest thing Tesla's ever announced, and I want to see them. I want them to be delivered, but for my own personal use case, no, doesn't make sense. It's the same reason I'm obsessed with the Tesla Semi, and I love talking about it, and I love hearing about Megachargers getting installed by Pepsi or Tesla or whatever, because I'm sick of these big, loud, dangerous diesel semi trucks driving everywhere, and I want to see a smart, autonomous, efficient Tesla semi driving regularly. Whenever I go on road trips and that kind of thing, I want to see more electric semi trucks. Do I need a semi truck? No, of course not, but I'm excited for that. Same thing with the Cybertruck. Is like I'm sick of how many old, dated, ugly looking gas powered noisy pickup trucks I see every day, and I want to see like this post apocalyptic, utility emphasis Cybertruck that's efficient but practical, and it can do more, and it's faster, and it can go longer than any other gas truck. That excites me, but I'm not in the market for it. um, let's see. Teslas need night vision like Mercedes and integrate with Apple Glass. That would take a long time to switch everything to night vision, but they've got headlights. They can see. Maybe not as well at night, but they can still do pretty well. Let's see. In my opinion, I don't think it's in Tesla's best interest to worry about robo taxis. Keep selling cars, keep selling insurance, and don't worry about robo taxis till they actually have level 5 autonomy. Well, that's the thing, Joey. You're not going to suddenly stumble upon robo taxis. You have to develop them, and this is how you do it. I don't think. I understand why it's in Tesla's best interest, though. I mean, a lot of people I don't think understand that there is a lot of environmental and efficiency benefits to coming up with robo taxis, because by Tesla's mindset, if you're able to own and operate a fleet of autonomous driving vehicles, each one of those can drive people when they need them, and those cars aren't going to be stuck in parking lots or stuck in garages all day when you're not using them, like my car is. I'm not using it, so it just sits there. A robo-taxi, with its use case of efficiency and always driving where it's needed, you could replace like 8 gas cars with one robo-taxi, theoretically. There's the other debate about, well, some people want to own their own car and that kind of thing, but the logic can be made that having an autonomous vehicle will allow one EV to replace more and more gas cars, whereas if you're just focused on a sell to consumer model, you can sell a Model Y to me, and now you've replaced one gas car with one electric car. Okay, that's good. That's a win for the environment, but a robo-taxi with shared use means less cars overall, and cheaper cost of ownership, to the point that Tesla's logic is that less and less people will want to own cars because the cost of driving yourself with a robo-taxi is going to be so cheap that you won't want to bother owning your own car. The cost of charging, the cost of insurance, and the cost of all that is going to be higher than it is to just hail a robo-taxi everywhere you go. I have my own problematic issues with that, like Runny Race is saying. Yeah, truck drivers or people that use their car for more than driving from point A to point B, yes, they're going to want to own their own car, and there's also a mental thing about it, like people want to have something that they know is theirs and isn't used by a bunch of other people. So yeah, I have my own issue with that mindset, but there is still a giant pot of gold for anyone that can crack the robotaxi problem. And I do think it's worthy of looking into because people die every day because of human drivers. So the sooner we can get cars all driving themselves, the safer our roads can be. Not to mention, you can make a ton of money if you have your own robotaxi fleet. So I think it's a worthy thing to be researching. I don't think Tesla should just give up on it and walk away. I think there's a lot of environmental benefits, financial benefits, and safety benefits by figuring out self-driving tech. But it's not going to happen overnight. That's just what we have to remind ourselves. It's going to be a slow and steady process. Um, no, I won't put truck nuts on my Cybertruck. No, I don't get why anyone does that. But I'm not planning on buying a Cybertruck, at least in the foreseeable future. I'm trying to visualize what would happen in my life where I would want to get one, other than I just become a car collector, because that's the thing. There's a lot of people that want a Cybertruck and have plans to use it. I have no clue what I would use it for. I'd be like, wow, this is really cool, and then I would just sit there. Okay, I can drive it around town. I can take it on road trips and stuff, but when we go on road trips, we basically just throw some suitcases in the back trunk and we drive there. So I would much rather drive there in a smaller, more efficient vehicle like the Model Y that's going to be easy to park and use less energy per mile. Got to keep in mind, like the miles per gallon equivalent thing doesn't go away with EVs. I think a lot of people are forgetting that with electric pickup trucks. That was actually the biggest deterrent when I was thinking about the Rivian R1T. I was like, dang, this is kind of cool. I kind of like this. And, I like the way I look in a truck. It's an ego thing, I want to look cool. I want to get work done and that type of thing. But once I started looking at how much it costs to charge that thing, if you go on a road trip with a Rivian, it's like 3 times the price of a Model Y per mile. So that adds up, especially now that no one can get free supercharging anymore. You can save a lot of money in the long run if you're planning on driving your car and taking road trips and stuff. That's probably the most common use case I can see me and my wife doing, is like taking a lot of cross-country road trips, because we've got family that lives out of state and that lives far away, but they're within driving distance. And of course, taking the Tesla would be cheaper than flying. And I like that the Tesla can do most of the driving itself. So I see myself utilizing that, but the idea that I need, a big adaptive air suspension and a big bed that can fit a bunch of stuff inside it, and I need this really wide truck with 6 seats. Not really. I'd be more inclined to get an Aptera over a Cybertruck. Can't Tesla make superchargers in a typical gas station layout so that different types of car sizes can fit? They can. It's just you can't charge as many vehicles at once. That's not a horrible idea, Hypervenom. It's just that for most of Tesla's vehicles, Model 3, Y, S, and X, I guess that's all their vehicles, they can all fit in a standard parking spot. So if you just find a traditional parking area and you just line up the superchargers all next to each other, you can install 12, 20, 30 stalls. Whereas if you try to do the gas station approach of, a couple pumps, you got like 6 stalls. Okay, it's kind of easier to drive through them, but it takes up more space to lay them out the way a gas station does. So the wait time is going to be longer for most Teslas. Now, there's not a perfect way to do it, but we're seeing some of the cons, some of the downsides to this approach of let's just stuff as many superchargers we can in a small amount of space. So they have like 12 or 20 within a parking lot, all right next to each other. Once you start coming out with large vehicles like the Cybertruck and you have more people with Tesla's towing, yeah, now it gets a little more complicated and it gets kind of sucky for the people towing stuff. So I do think that we're going to need more variety and layouts of superchargers, yes, but for the vast majority of circumstances, their current approach probably makes the most sense. I get why they did it this way, but yeah, it's not a flawless system. Which level 5 is years off? Robo taxis are decades off, at least 2. Wait, what? I would say level 3 is something I could see us hitting this decade, as in there still needs to be a human in the driver's seat, but they don't have to pay attention anymore. That I'm really excited for. I want to see that happen. You just sit in the car, turn it on, starts driving, and then you just sit and just watch a movie on the screen, play a game, go on your phone, read a book, and the car's doing all the driving. And yes, it might freak out at some point and beep at you, and it turns the movie off and says, hey, I'm confused here, can you take over? It's not going to do that on the highways, but probably like confusing areas like construction zones or weird parking areas, or like my driveway. There's a lot of weird driveways that have kind of awkward turns and not really paved roads in a lot of places, and trying to expect the neural net to know exactly how to handle all of these kind of weird driveways, that's going to be kind of tricky. Hopefully, I always thought it'd be interesting if there was a way to like record and say like, okay, I'm going to drive out of my driveway a weird way, but I want Tesla to analyze how I drove out and then just copy that for future reference. I don't know. There might be ways to do that, but yeah, like level 5 is when you start saying human not necessary. Level 4, actually, you start doing that. If you say human not necessary, but you can work within this city, that's level 4. I think level 3 is something we could see relatively soon if FSD beta gets better and better and Dojo gets better. Superchargers are going to need to be drive-through for towing for different brands, etc. Yeah, the thing, towing is not the most common driving use case. So I understand why Tesla doesn't make all their superchargers drive-through, but some of them are. And I hope in the future a growing number of them will be for people who are towing. But yeah, towing is not what most EVs are doing. In the situations like LA, where you just have a bunch of Teslas driving around, they're not towing, you need to charge as many of those Teslas at once as possible. So trying to do a bunch of pull-through stations versus just a bunch of back-end stations, it's actually better to have the back-end approach because you can charge more at once. If you do pull-through, that takes up more space and you wouldn't be able to charge as many EVs. I have seen the Edison Future Truck. It looks kind of cool, but I haven't had much thoughts of it. Ex-Tesla engineer that believes the Tesla stock will 1000x. I don't believe that, but his reasoning was fascinating. What you said about the local maximum is true, but just look at how quickly Tesla rebuilt the software. Crazy pace. I wouldn't say it's that crazy, just considering how long we've been in FSD beta. And I remember when FSD beta first came out, people were like, imagine how good this will be in a year. And it's been a year now, and it's still like, yeah, it's better, but there's still a lot of mistakes it makes fairly regularly. So yes, the likelihood of a zero intervention drive has increased, but it has not become normal enough for it to become level 3, which is a pretty crucial step you're going to have to go into before you go to level 4. Tech entrepreneur / futurist Tony Seba, Rethink S, suggests robotaxis will be 10 times less per mile, save people thousands per year, help disrupt economy, car insurance. Yeah, theoretically, if the car could drive safely and get you where you need to go all by itself, it would be, yes, much, much cheaper. But I don't think that will replace all car ownership, because that implies that the only reason people buy cars is to get from point A to point B, and that's not true. Some cars are used for work, some cars are bigger to accommodate for more hobbies, and some cars are used for different things. Some cars are taken off-roading, some cars are used for camping and whatnot. So there's just a lot of people that are still going to want to own their car. I don't think it's a small percentage. I don't think it's a niche. I actually think it's a fairly large percentage of the population that's still going to want to own their own car. Tesla might not care about them if they crack robotaxis, because they can make far more money off of their cars if they just turn them into robotaxis. But yeah, I think inner city areas where people live in big buildings and apartments and don't want to have a parking spot and deal with a lot of traffic all the time and having a hard time finding parking. In those circumstances, I could see robotaxis being much more popular. But where I live, in the rural area, and you would have to wait probably 15 or 20 minutes for a robotaxi to show up, and people use their trucks a lot for different things, yeah, it would not replace cars here. Do you think electricity could ever get more expensive than gas? Not likely, as more and more energy is switching to renewables, and renewables are getting cheaper and cheaper. The reason gas doesn't just magically cost more for no reason. The reason gasoline costs more is because the infrastructure is more complicated. Like, we already use electricity, whether you like it or not. We use it at home for our lights and for heating and, our screens. You're watching this thanks to electricity. So that grid already exists. And um, you basically can have a power plant or a solar farm or renewable energy, dirty energy, whatever it is, produce that energy in a centralized position, and then we wire that energy through power lines and all these poles everywhere, and wires come to your house and makes all the electrical stuff work. With gasoline, it's this very intricate and complicated process where you pump oil out of the ground, which takes energy, transport that oil to a refinery, which takes energy, refine the oil, which takes energy, then transport that oil that has now been refined into gasoline to the gas station, which takes energy, and then you pump the gasoline from the station into your car, which also takes energy. So every one of these steps, there's middlemen, there's infrastructure, there's trucks that have to drive, and there's people that have to work to make all this stuff happen. And that's what results in gasoline costing more. It's also heavily subsidized. So gasoline could cost a lot more if it wasn't. So with renewables in the lowering cost of solar panels, um, electricity should get actually cheaper than it is today, um, because there's just less steps involved. If you can just build the solar panel, put it on your house, boom, done. Energy goes into your house and goes into the car. That's it. So, um, yeah, it's not like just by happenstance or by some random chain of events it resulted in gas costing more than electricity. It's like it's more complicated and it uses more energy. It's a less efficient infrastructure. So much energy is lost along the way. That's why gasoline costs so much more. If the price of electricity skyrockets, more people will just get solar. Easy fix for a lot of people, though fusion electricity generation is coming faster than some think. It's kind of outside of our jurisdiction, though, is the problem. Like, I'm all in favor of more nuclear energy or more fusion or, you know, power plants at scale doing some kind of massive energy creation, but that's not really something I can fund. I can vote for people and hope that those voted people encourage nuclear or encourage fusion and that kind of thing. But the easier solution is I could just buy solar panels and put them on my house. I don't need to have a certain politician in office to make that happen. Kind of the hoping that the grid switches to more efficient or more renewable forms of energy. There's very little involvement you can actually do it with that. But when it comes to solar, you can completely disconnect yourself from the grid at this point. I mean, you can buy some power walls and some solar panels and you're done. It's like, okay, I don't care what the rest of the grid is. That's something you can be involved with and you can actually support, which is what I like about it, because I know the grid can change their prices, and the grid can be coal powered, it can be nuclear powered, it can be whatever, and it's kind of outside of what you're capable of influencing. But if you do more of your own stuff with solar and go more off grid, doesn't really matter who's in office, doesn't matter what they believe. You're clean, you're good. Um, Waymo is available in my area. That's good. What is your opinion on Waymo? It's kind of cool. I think a lot of Tesla people hate on it more than they should. I think it's impressive that there is a service that exists where you can hail a taxi, get in it, and it'll take you where you need to go, and there's no one in the front seat. That's pretty cool. Now, is it a threat to Tesla in any way? No, because it cannot be scaled. The technology is extremely expensive, and the HD mapping that they have to do and all of the tech that they have to incorporate into the car to work, and they have shadow drivers, and a lot of the tech stops working whenever it rains. Yeah, that's not really coming anywhere close to what Tesla is trying to achieve with their vehicles. So I still think it's impressive. Like, in the meantime, as Tesla has not solved robotaxi problems, and Tesla is years away from, probably decades away from level 5, it's still cool that there is some level 4 autonomous systems. Like, if I was in a place that had Waymo, I would totally use it. I don't care that it has to take 3 right turns to go left, and I don't care that it doesn't work sometimes in the rain, but it's a very, very impressive science experiment. But it's not like in my view, like the future of all self-driving. I don't think that's what it's going to look like. Seems like Tesla will be forced to buy or otherwise pay for graphene batteries. Wait, what? They're not ramping graphene batteries in any significant volume. There's nothing wrong with the current chemistry of batteries in vehicles. The bigger problem with our transition to electric vehicles is scale. Graphene is not being ramped in a significant amount relative to how 2170s or 4680 cells are going to be ramped. They have the cycle life. They can last the length of the car. They have the resources on Earth. We've got between lithium iron phosphate and nickel, and less cobalt being used, and batteries being capable of being melted down and recycled, thanks to redwood materials and Tesla now taking back their old batteries and recycling them, taking the raw materials out and rebuilding them. I don't know why people keep assuming we need some big breakthrough in energy density, or that, like, we can't sell the current technology fast enough. People keep buying it. Like, the bigger problem with this whole transition is we can't build enough of this thing. Once you solve the production capacity problem, everything else takes care of itself. If you think your issue with EVs is cost, you can lower cost if you have higher volume. If you think the issue with EVs is range, if you have higher volume, you can afford to make certain batteries with higher energy density that can have a certain range number. And also, EVs don't need to have the same range of gas cars because we have mostly home charging for the majority of EV owners. And we've already seen there's far more people willing to buy a Tesla than there are Teslas available. That's why the prices keep going up and the estimated delivery keeps getting pushed back and back and back. So I think it's kind of a waste of time to get hung up on these. What is this next generation battery going to be capable of? It's like, can you build 3 terawatt hours of it within the next decade? If not, it's not going to change much. Okay, great. You can build 100 cars that go 500 miles on a charge. Big whoop. People are going to take breaks to use the bathroom anyway. It's kind of a pointless flex at this point. So that's why I'm glad Tesla is more focused on, we need to find a way of building enough of these things. If you want to start transitioning the global fleet of vehicles to electric, you're going to need to be able to build on the scale of terawatt hours, not a few kilowatt hours, which is what graphene is at right now. So I don't believe they will be forced to buy graphene, especially if people are still buying. People are still spending $100,000 on Teslas that have 1865 batteries, which are not bad by any means. They still work. Teslas that go over 400 miles on a charge still are using a cylindrical format from 10 years ago. It's not like that battery instantly becomes dated if you find some new chemistry. You still need politicians, county commissioners, state legislatures to not sabotage solar PV in any number of ways. There's only so many ways they can sabotage it, though. At the end of the day, solar production is still going down. Politicians just need to focus on the facts and not sentiments. Well, asking a politician to focus on the facts is kind of like, asking corn to listen to you. It has ears, but that doesn't mean it can hear you. I've kind of given up on the idea of the government doing the right thing. That's just kind of out of the question at this point. So, especially with our current administration. I hope Model 3 and Y prices drop after Giga Texas opens, though the coming tax credit might negate the massive production capacity increases. I don't think the production capacity is going to massively increase in the near future. It'll probably take around a year for it to be significantly high volume, but they're not going to build Model 3 at Giga Texas, at least in any type of near future. So I don't see why Model 3 prices would go down at all. But yeah, the tax credit will probably result in prices going up, ironically. I got to get going here pretty soon, guys. But what do I think about Elon's tax situation? I honestly don't follow it very closely. I think it's interesting that he's like maximizing how much he pays in taxes. I think he's just doing that to prove a point that he doesn't care about money. The only reason Elon has a bunch of money is because we all bought his stock, and he owns a lot of that stock. But he's clearly shown before he doesn't care if that stock tanks, and he doesn't care what people think of him. So if he wants to pay more taxes, good for him. I'm in fine with him doing whatever he wants to do. Hold your breath for any price drops with current demand. Exactly, Tim. With demand as high as it is, I don't think we're going to see price drops in the near future, unfortunately. I have not visited Australia, but I've been trying to for years. They're kind of locked down right now, but um, anyway, there's a lot of great questions. Thank you guys for asking all these. I do need to get going. We've got some errands to run and Thanksgiving plans to take care of. But there will be an EV video dropping later today, so stay tuned for that. It's about Rivian. Unfortunately, it's not good news, but still, the video is coming soon. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope you have an excellent rest of your day.